You're at your old trusty boat you call Mighty Sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast. I'm your host, Jerome Rand. All right, we are live here aboard Mighty Sparrow. Today I have a very special guest. I'm only going to say his first name because we're going to keep him under wraps, but I've got Chris, a fellow Marina guest down here. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
I know there's going to be quite a few people that listen to this one, especially because it's you, because you have such a fan base out there. But I guess first and foremost, dude, how did you end up down here? Or no, before that, what's your what are you floating on over there?
Oh, right now I have a 131 in 1986 that I picked up in Miami, Florida. But before that, I actually got into sailing. I was in Fernandina Beach, Florida, managing a bed and breakfast, and the owners were selling it. And I was managing the place, and I really was tired of like bartending and bar managing and staying up till 2 a.m. So when they sold the place, I had a little bonus. So I always wanted to live on a sailboat for some reason. I kept looking at them online and looking at the layouts. I'd never been on one. I was like, oh man, that would be so nice to live on one. I could go anywhere I want.
The ultimate dream of freedom.
Yeah. I ended up, I bought a generator, a little Honda 1000. I bought a little dinghy with a motor. I bought a little handheld GPS, and then I started looking on eBay for like auctions on sailboats.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Finally, I kept bidding, and I knew I lowballed everything, and I knew I would never win. And I had this Catalina 27 that came up, and I bid $2,500, and it was a no reserve, and no one else bid, so I won it.
Oh, wow.
And it was in Baltimore, Maryland. So I was like, oh no, now what? I bought this thing, so what do I do? So
what have I done?
I went to I went downtown Fernandina, and I found a sailing school, and I took 3 days of sailing lessons.
Oh, you didn't know anything. You just had the dream.
I'd never been on a boat.
Good on you, man.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I won this boat, and I was like, oh gosh, now I have to train myself. So I took the little 3 days of sailing lessons, and then I had a buddy of mine who was from Switzerland who had come down. And he was a bartender at the same place where I was working, and he didn't want to work there anymore either. So I was like, well, I just bought this boat. Let's go get it.
Yeah.
You know, it'll take 2 weeks. We'll go up there.
It'll be a ball, man.
Yeah,
Bunch
it'll
of beers.
be easy. So I had a savings account, but I only took $800 with me, and I was going to save the rest. And I thought, well, if we don't make it all the way down, we'll just stop somewhere and work. And he was like, oh, that'd be great. You know, we'll do. You know,
How old were you when you did this?
Man, I was probably...
Can you remember that far back? Oh,
28.
28.
Yeah.
Oh, the glory
I'm 48
days.
now, so this is 20 years ago.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
You don't look a day over 31.
Well, thank you.
Just saying.
So, yeah, we jumped on a Amtrak train, and we went up to Baltimore. And I had an old girlfriend who was driving somewhere up there. I think she was going to Maine. So we packed all our stuff in her truck, and she drove up there. And then 2 days later, we jumped on this train, and we went to Baltimore, and she met us up there, and we unpacked the dinghy. We had like a little styrofoam cooler. We had some food.
Yeah.
We were going to start from there. But I got there, and the boat had no anchor, no radio, no dock lines. The guy wanted his dock lines back, no fenders. So I had to buy all these things. So the $800 went to like $280 I had.
Yeah, just trying to make it worthy of the intercoastal, not even seaworthy.
So I was like, okay, now I definitely know we're not going to make it all the way down. We're going to have to stop and work. So we ended up the next morning. We get in there, start the little outboard up. It wouldn't run. Trying to crank that for like half a day. So finally we took the outboard that I had from the dinghy. It was a 9.9. So we just put that on the back. And I knew that would work because it was brand new. So we started that up. And we went off the dock. I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to steer around. We had no charts. I didn't think we'd needed charts because we had a road map, and it had the major buoys on it for the
really?
for Chesapeake Bay. And I thought that'll be fine. So we go out there, and the first thing I do is I go off to the right and I ground the boat. I ground the boat, and I didn't tie the dinghy out, and the dinghy came off, and it was floating away.
Right.
So Goran had to jump in the boat, get the dinghy, go back. We were trying to reverse forward, turning that thing. Finally got out. Got out of Baltimore and got into the Chesapeake Bay, and then a storm hit because we hadn't checked the weather.
Right.
We hooked the radio up, but I didn't
weather.
know.
What's weather?
Yeah, I didn't even know
We're the
there was a
intercoastal.
weather station on the radio. I had no idea. I knew 16 was hailing.
My road atlas isn't showing the weather.
Yeah, and the guy I bought it from, when he gave me the title, he told me what channel the bridges were on. I can't remember if it was 9 or 13, but I knew the bridges and I knew the hailing. So we just left, and then of course the storm came up, and we just got pounded. We didn't put the sails up because I was nervous about driving the boat.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It was a tiller, and we just got pounded for like 8 hours. We were out there. We had to refuel, and we had tied the extra fuel cans up on the bow. So Goran would have to go up onto the bow in this huge storm. He was just getting beat trying to untie these fuel cans and bring one back, and then fill up the little 6-gallon gas can we had in the cockpit. And we got to probably 10 miles north of Annapolis, and we were so beat down and tired, and we didn't know what to do. So I called Boat US and had them come out and
just tow you.
We weren't stuck. We weren't anything. We were just like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. It's the first time on the boat.
I think we might die. Like, there's a chance that we might die. So
no, we thought for sure the boat was going to sink. No, it was fine. It wasn't even that bad of a storm, but the first time being out there,
it can be very rough. It's like a big shock to the system when the weather turns on you for the first time, and you're sort of, whoa, okay.
Yeah, that quick, especially when you leave and it's sunny and beautiful, and 2 hours later, you just see that rolling cloud come in.
Many a sailor has turned back to shore, never to go to sea again.
Well, we called good old Boat US.
Yeah.
And they ended up towing us into Annapolis, into Back Creek where Bert Jabin's marina was. And we had gotten in there, and we didn't want to stop and have to pay for marina. So we're like, oh, this is fine. Just, let us anchor.
Yeah.
So we anchored and signed a little thing. He took off. We were just like, So we slept that night and all the next day. We were like, all right, look, let's just stop here for a while.
Yeah.
And we'll get jobs. So we went around Annapolis.
Let's rethink our life decisions at this point. Hey, let's get that microphone. Pull it over that way just a little.
This way? Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
So, we ended up getting day labor jobs in Annapolis, Maryland.
Oh, nice.
And,
okay.
Yeah, it was really nice. I mean, it was terrible because we had to get up at 3:30, and I think you had to be there by 4, and you had to sign in, and then you would wait to see if you got a job that day.
Oh, I used to do that in Fort Lauderdale. You stand on the corner.
Yeah.
And
for the first 2 days, we didn't get a job. So we were like, oh, no, what are we going to do? And like the third day, we had talked to the lady. So she got to know she really liked Goran because he was from Switzerland, big, tall, like Nordic, good-looking guy. So we'd flirt with her. So she got us a job at the Naval Academy, raking leaves.
Oh,
like we would rake leaves, and they had like blowers and all kinds of like machinery, and all these other guys would drive the machinery, and our job was just to rake leaves. So we ended up doing that for 2 weeks, and it was kind of off and on. I'd rake leaves for like an hour, and then I would just go walk around the Naval Academy because I was inside.
Yeah.
It was like a museum. There were old cannons and statues and plaques everywhere. So we ended up, I think it was about 2 weeks we stayed there.
Well, those kind of jobs, I mean, typically, I can remember being pretty downtrodden when, I would get passed up for a few days. But then as soon as you hook into a job, if you have 2 brain cells and you work hard, then
they start loving you.
Yeah,
because you show up every day.
You there all the time.
Yeah. So we did that for a time until we.
So that got you back on the boat.
Yeah, we each made like $400 or $500 a piece, I think. So we were ready to.
Where was
restock.
the destination? Were you trying to get back down to Florida?
Yeah, to Fernandina Beach.
Oh, okay. So you had a long way to go.
Yeah, and we thought we were gonna just jump in and cruise and make
we'll just set the sails and crank back, watch the sunset.
So we ended up taking off again. And I think we made it all the way down to It wasn't Wilmington. It was Masonboro in North Carolina is where we finally stopped going down the intercoastal. And I had bought a little old GPS. We had bought charts. We had charts, the 3 chart books. I think one was like the Chesapeake Bay, and then one was like Norfolk to Fernandina Beach.
Oh, yeah, the coastal charts.
Yeah, I bought the one from Fernandina Beach to Miami just in case. So we had charts, and I had the little black and white GPS with it just had the 2 black lines, and you put a waypoint in.
Yeah.
Which I'm so glad I started off that way, and because you really had to learn how to read the charts and know the waypoints, and it didn't have any topography on there, so you didn't see the shores or water.
Right.
I mean, you could be in the desert with that thing. Did you see the same 2 black lines straight
telling
to the
you go this way, follow the line.
Yeah. So we made it all the way to Masonboro, and then Goran had to go back. His green card had expired like a couple of months before, and he had gotten a DUI in Fernandina Beach, so he was nervous about getting back, which he should have been.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah, as soon as he got back, he went to court, and they arrested him right there.
I bet they did.
Yeah, took him to Miami. He had to spend 6 months in jail before they deported him back to Switzerland.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, you definitely don't mess around if you've got expired anything and you're an immigrant here. Oh man.
Yeah, especially with the DUI. I think they probably would have let him stay or not deported him if he didn't have that DUI. But the DUI sealed his fate.
Well, especially too if he got that, and then I'm assuming he probably busted, didn't go to court.
He got the DUI and didn't go to court, and then tried to go 3 months afterward and be like, "Oh, sorry," and they were like, "Oh,
I don't understand your funny rules here."
And they were like, "Let us explain." So I lost my crewmate, and I had to go. I ended up getting a job in Wilmington too. I went back to Fernandina for a while because I had a girlfriend there. I spent like 3 weeks with her, and then I came back up to Wilmington and got a job in a little Italian restaurant. And again, I worked there for about 3 weeks until I had just enough money to get out of there.
Get moving again.
Pay the dock, because we put the boat on a dock, so I had to pay like the back dock. So I paid the dock rent, saved up some money, and then made it to Fernandina Beach, and ended up selling that Pearson. And then did the same thing.
Catalina?
This was a Pearson 26.
Oh.
The second boat I bought was a Catalina 27. Hopefully,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
So I sold the Pearson 26, and then I bought a Catalina 27 in Solomon's Island, Maryland. So I went all the way back up to Maryland again.
Why don't you buy a boat like it's
because it was an adventure. I didn't want to buy one near me.
Okay.
I wanted to buy one far away so I could sell back.
I understand that. Okay, gotcha.
So I went up to Solomon's Island, Maryland, and then got a job for a while up there. This was in October when I went up there.
Oh, so you're still tail end of the hurricane season, getting ready for gale season.
Yeah, super cold, super cold. I remember when I got the Catalina, it was on the hard, and the guy put it in the water with the travel lift, and I went out and I anchored over by Sennheiser's, I think, and it was like 11 degrees. Ugh. So the whole time I had to spend in the sleeping bag. I was always in that bag.
Stove is on low, just like, oh man, it's freezing.
And again, I didn't have any money, so I ended up in Solomon's Island, Maryland. There's like a tiki bar there that opens up. It opens up in probably April, I think.
Yeah.
And then 100,000 people come to this island, and it parties on, and then the season starts, and from there on it's busy. But when I got there, it was dead. So I got a job in a little Italian restaurant, and I think I worked there for a week, and I waited on one table.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 6 nights I worked there, and no one came in the place. And then I think I had one table one of those nights. And so at the end of the 7 days, I had met another guy who worked at Spring Cove Marina in the service department. So he was like, "Well, we need somebody to paint boat bottoms. We got to get all these boats ready." So,
does it pay more than $2 an hour?
Yeah, I was like $2.13 I was making.
Yep.
So I jumped on that, and that was a terrible job. Terrible job.
Boat bottoms are you're trading your life, because those chemicals getting into you are So toxic, so horrible.
It was horrible. And I even had the paper suit. Like they have that full paper suit that you put on. And I had a mask, and it's still, all that paint was just getting in my nose and my ears and my hair. So every night I was taking a shower, and all this blue or black or red paint was coming off in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, and if that stuff gets on your skin, all the chemicals are seeping into your skin.
Oh, yeah.
Although I know quite a few people that do that without a mask.
Oh, yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah. The
Cigarette
old guy,
hanging out of the mouth.
The old guy that I painted boat bottoms with, he had the little paper mask over his face, and he would cut a hole into it and stick his pipe in there. So he was smoking and sanding on his pipe, and I was like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Those things come back to haunt you later in life. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But, oh,
It's a good experience, though. I learned a lot about boats, finally.
Yeah.
Like everyone there was really helpful. So I worked that job for probably 2 months.
And that was, you said, a Pearson?
No, this was a Catalina
this
27.
Was a Catalina. Okay.
Yeah. And that was a nice one because I had a Nissan 18 horsepower on the back.
Oh, nice.
So I didn't have to floor it all the time. I could just half throttle it, and it would do 5 knots. So that was my day. I would do 5 knots. I would spend 10 hours at the wheel, having to pee in the jugs because you couldn't get up.
Yeah, it's just you.
Yeah, just doing 50 miles a day, 50 miles a day, 50 miles a day. Same as the Pearson.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I took that down to, made that down to Fernandina Beach. And then I met a couple of other boaters, and they were like, we're going to the Keys. We're going to the Keys. And I was like, oh, nice. So I still had probably almost $1,000. And so I didn't get a job in Fernandina Beach. I just sailed with these guys. And that was the first time I had really started to put up the sails on the Catalina.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So I was going out.
Like, did you get like sailing books or anything like that?
I had the Sailing Fundamentals book that I bought when I was taking the sailing lessons.
Yeah.
So,
you had a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah, I had a little bit of knowledge.
What is this white triangle?
Yeah, and I was one of 3 boats. So there was a couple on this Morgan 33, and the guy would come and spend some time with me on the Catalina 27 and just sail with me. And finally sailed with those guys down until I got to about Vero Beach because they didn't want to go on the Intercoastal at all. So we always went out to sea.
Yeah.
So I made it. I followed them until I got to about Vero Beach, and I was out probably 20 miles offshore, and the mast snapped.
Oh,
It was leaning. It was great. I was keeping up with all these guys. I had a little Catalina 27, so it was always like difficult keeping up with them. But that day was just perfect. And I had them in my sights, and all of a sudden, like I hear this strange noise, and I look up, and like 2/3 the way up the mast, I see it like bend. And a split second later, the whole mast just came down.
Buckles.
Buckled, came down, and the spreader's like pounding against the hull. I thought the spreader was going to go right through the hull. So I had wire cutters, and I ended up cutting all the cables around the boat.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it sink, and I was like, oh, you know what? I should have tied at least a rope to a cleat and tried to like save the sails, because the mast, the boom, the sails, the jib, everything. And it was in crystal clear water, so I could see it spinning and just floating away. And I was like, oh, no.
What have I done?
Yeah. So one of the other boats, they were freaking out. So they called the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard ended up calling me on the radio. And it took probably 3.5 hours to get into wherever that inlet is. I think it was Vero Beach.
You just motored in, right?
Yeah, motored in with the Coast Guard calling me every 15 minutes. So, and the radio was in the cockpit, so they kept calling me, and I'd have to like leave the tiller and run up to the radio and be like, yeah, I'm okay. And I would start, motoring again, and 15 minutes later they would call me. And I finally get in, and I anchor. I get into the inlet, and I go probably 3/4 of a mile, and I anchor, and an FWC cop comes over and wants to do a safety check, and ends up giving me a ticket for no anchor light because the mast was gone. I was so pissed.
Yeah, it's like, well,
and he knew. He was listening to the Coast Guard the whole time. He was like, yeah, I told him that my mast is snapped. And he was like, oh, you're the one. Yeah, I was listening to this the whole day. And he still gave me that ticket.
He was out for blood.
Mm-hmm. So I ended up motoring it, the other two boats kept sailing, so I didn't catch them until I got to Miami. But I went back into the intercoastal, motored it all the way down to Miami, which was kind of nice because I didn't hit any of those bridges. I could go underneath all those bridges instead of waiting.
Because essentially, now you're a power boat, and you're just like, doodaloo.
Yeah, and I went to Dinner Key, and I ended up getting a job at some kind of rib place. I can't remember what it was. But I stayed there for like 2 months because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get a mast or how much it would cost. And I was anchored by Dinner Key, and I think it was Dinner Key, or maybe it was the next island over. But another Pearson 26 had washed up on shore. And I was there for so long, all these boats would break loose and get washed up on shore. And every once in a while, at the city marina, they'd bring these enormous dumpsters. And these big cranes would go out on these barges, and they just grab these boats and put them on the barge, and then they'd take them in, and they'd go from the barge into these big dumpsters. So I knew this Pearson 26 was going to get demolished. So I went and asked a cop, hey, and it had the mast was already down and tied to the side of the boat.
Yeah.
So I asked a cop if I could get the mast. He's like, no, you can't touch those things. You can't even mess with them, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I was like, oh, all right. So I waited there another 2 days. And then at night, I swam over there in my snorkel gear, and I untied that mast from the Pearson 26. And I had another buddy with me that I met there. Oh, yeah. Untied it. It was probably, we waited till about 11:30. Untied the mast, tied a rope around my waist to the mast, and just let the mast fall. We were probably in maybe 12 or 15 feet of water.
Yeah.
So I let the mast fall, and it was one end of it was dragging along the ground, and then one end was up in the water, like tied to my hip.
Oh my!
And I just swam that thing probably a half mile back to my boat, and it took. We left at 11:30 or 12, and I got back just as the sun was coming up to my boat, swimming all night with this mast trying to get it because it was the mast. It was the mast. It was the boom was like tied to it, and all the rigging was on there. I didn't know if it would fit or not. It ended up fitting.
Fuck, you didn't drag you under.
It wasn't really that bad. It was hard to drag it because that the other end was dragging along the ground.
Like my kingdom for a dinghy.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I had a life jacket on.
Oh, you must have. There's no way you would.
Because I must have.
Not even David Phelps. Or no, not David Phelps. What is it? Mike Phelps.
Yeah, but I got it. I got it back to the boat, and I was so nervous that I was going to get caught because the sun was coming up, and I didn't want anybody to see me. So I finally tied it to the side of my boat, and I took the anchor up immediately, and I just left out. Yeah, went out into Biscayne Bay, and then went out into Hawks Channel, and just, I kept going down. I had to stop one night, anchored out, and then I went into Marathon in the Keys, and I met up with my other buddies and dragged this mast. And they had met a bunch of other boaters, and we met an old guy on a Endeavor 40.
Yeah,
I think it was. And he was just a whiz. He was like, yeah, just pull that thing right up to the side of my boat. And we pulled it up to the boat, and he had rigged ropes on. Yeah. And we lifted the mast right next to his boat, stuck it on there, and all the rigging fit. I had to turn the turnbuckles, adjust the turnbuckles, but everything else fit. I didn't have any sails though, but at least I had the mast and the sails.
Yeah.
And I was finally in Boot Key Harbor, and I ended up staying there for about 7 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I stayed there for almost a year on the Catalina 27. I got a job in Isla Mirada, so I left Boot Key, and I went to Isla Mirada on the Gulf side and anchored out there, and I worked in a bar, and I finally had like a real job. It wasn't a real job, but I would make $200-300 average a night.
Yeah.
And on the weekends I could make $500.
Oh, there you go.
So I lived on the boat. There was no place to take a shower, so every morning I'd jump in, like in the ocean, just lather up, get ready, go to work, and I probably stayed there for maybe 5 months and saved up all the money I could. I mean, I got to eat for free there.
Because was there like an overarching sort of goal in mind?
Just to be in the Keys, really.
Oh, just to get in the Keys.
Yeah, and just to screw around and have money and be able to hang out. And yeah, so I saved up and I bought that Hunter 31 that I'm on now, and I took it back to Boot Key Harbor, and I ended up anchoring on the other side, on the Gulf side, over by a bar called Salty's. And I met a buddy that I still know, another sailor buddy who had just bought a Grampian 26. And once I got it, I spent all the money on the Hunter 31, so I had no money left.
The one that you're on now.
Yeah, I had to borrow money from my mom. So I had, not only did I have no money, but I had to pay her back. And that's when I started spearfishing. We actually made a Hawaiian sling. I went to the hardware store and bought the rubber, like the band. And we
because that's just, isn't it? It's just basically a rubber strap, and then
it was.
Is there like a tube or anything?
Yeah, it was a piece of PVC and we had put the caps on and then drilled the holes. We had to buy the spears from the dive shop, but everything else we got from the hardware store. And it was the band, and we bought a little attachment that could slide around the band that held the spear on one side. Yeah. And then you would just put it in the PVC tube and through the drilled holes, and it would stick out both sides. And you could just bend it back and shoot it. Wow. And that's how we started spearfishing, because I couldn't find a job in Boot Key for the longest time. We had no money. My buddy Temple had no money. So we would just...
Man's got to eat.
Yeah. We learned where all the lobsters were. We learned where all the stone crabs were. I remember the first night we came back, we went out in a dinghy and we went to all the lobster traps, and we'd go up to the floats, and we'd just grab the floats and pull these things up and open up the traps and dump them in the dinghy. We
Without
had
a clue of how illegal it is.
No clue how illegal it was. But we had about 70 lobster tails in our dinghy when we came back in.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, ran into an old guy, and he was the one who was like, dude, do you guys know what you just did? Like, not only do you have 70 lobsters between two people, when the season, it wasn't even in season. So even in season, I think you can only get 6. Yeah. And half the lobsters we had were shorts. He was like, you guys would go to jail for 20 years. So we were like, oh, we don't care. So we ended up having
when you're young, you're a little dumb. You don't think of that sort of stuff.
No,
luckily the statute of limitations is well gone on those crimes.
Yeah, that was good 19, 20 years ago. So,
oh my gosh.
But we ended up having a feast that night. We were trading lobsters for like sides, like vegetables and sides from other boaters. And we were like, oh, this is a good idea. So from then on,
bing.
Yeah, we were spear fishing, and it was super easy over there because all those islands had those mangroves around them. Yeah. So we would swim up to the edge of the islands where all the mangrove roots were.
Oh, it's like a fish nursery.
Yeah. I mean, you could shoot snapper all day. There was snapper, grouper in there. I shot a couple of Goliath grouper, like the little baby ones, but the baby ones are 3.5 feet long.
100 pounds.
Yeah. And they just filled a whole frying pan. Had no idea it was illegal to shoot those either. But it was just a score when I could find those. And I'd get lobster tails, and I'd end up trading the lobster tails for sides like rice or vegetables or with other boaters, or I would do little odd jobs to make money. And I ended up doing that for about 4 months. Until I finally got a bartending job and at a place called Salty's, right where I was anchored. And I worked there for a few months. And
so that whole time you're just anchored out?
Anchored out.
Wow.
Yeah, with no motor. I had probably a 10-foot inflatable, and we used a kayak paddle. Both of us had inflatables, and we were both using kayak paddles because it's just such a pain to
What'd you do for fresh water? Were you just trying to catch it?
We would go to Salty's at the bar.
Uh-huh.
There was a dinghy dock. It was like a little fishing marina, but it had this old, like, rundown dinghy dock that they would just let us come up and tie up to, so we could bring our water jugs in there and fill them up. He didn't care.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, they were really cool. Thank God. Because when you go around to the Boot Key Harbor on the other side, it was like 5 cents a gallon for water. They were strict about where you could dinghy in. You couldn't dinghy in anywhere, and if you did, it was like $20 a day to dinghy in.
It's the worst. I've run into a few dinghy docks where it's like you got to check in at the office. $10. What?
Yeah. So that's why I stayed on the other side. But I did that for a while, and that's how I ended up buying all the scuba gear and started cleaning boat bottoms. And I was cleaning boat bottoms without scuba gear to begin with, because from spearfishing, I was with a lot of younger guys that could really, I mean, we'd go out to the reefs and these guys could go down 40, 50 feet and like stay down there. And I could get down there, but right away I'd want to come right back up because I didn't have any air.
It's nerve wracking when you're really sort of trying to push the limits of it, and it's super dangerous. You know, there's that whole blackout thing where you can think you got it, and then on your way up you black out, and then you're literally dead.
Yeah.
So
or you get right up, you're about 2 or 3 feet, and your body just sucks in water. You just have that automatic
that
impulse.
trigger. Yeah,
I did that a couple of times.
Yeah, I forget exactly what they call it. In the book The Perfect Storm, they talk about it, and it's basically your brain at a certain point when you're holding your breath goes, okay, holding my breath is definitely going to kill me. Maybe breathing in won't. And it just triggers this response, and you just breathe in, and that's when you get the water in, and then you die.
Yeah, thank God I was right at the surface, so I always came up and then just coughed for about 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, what's your favorite thing about spearfishing? You know, what makes it? Because that every time I've ever heard you talk about it, like your eyes sort of light up. There's a little glimmer, big smirk.
It was great down there, mostly because it was just a great way to eat. I mean, you always had fresh. Yeah, I was always poor. It was a great way to get seafood, and it was a great way to get exercise. I was in the best shape of my life because I would spend 4 or 5 hours a day
in
fishing,
the water, right?
Yeah, getting lobsters to either trade or always have 2 or 3 to cook on the boat, or like a couple of fish. There were sheep's head there, and there was such an amazing variety of fish there. There was yellowtail snapper, mutton snapper, the sheep's head. There was snook, grouper, lionfish.
I wonder what it looks like nowadays.
Well, it was around Boot Key Harbor and around Sombrero Reef. It's scarce. Like, it was really hard to fish out there and catch a fish. But a couple of times when we started going, especially when I started cleaning boat bottoms, and I would make decent money because there was a cruiser's net at 9 in the morning, and it was a little radio show where all the boaters would get on channel 68.
Oh yeah, and it'd be like,
do
who's
the buy sell trade.
Yeah, there we go.
So at the end of this show, whenever I was in Boot Key Harbor, I would just tell everybody, hey, I'm in Boot Key Harbor. I clean boat bottoms. And 2 or 3 people, like especially in the winter when it was packed, 2 or 3 people would be like, hey, I want my boat clean. I want my boat clean. So I would spend maybe a week in Boot Key Harbor cleaning boats, and then I would take off and either go somewhere around Key West, going towards Key West, but always finding like a little desolate island. And we would spend maybe a week at an island.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like the first day it was cleaning up trash. Because I don't know if they tell you this or not in the romantic brochures of the Keys, but all those islands are ringed with trash from the ocean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you'd have to spend the first day like cleaning up your beach and where you wanted to stay. And we had tents and we'd set them up. But then the spearfishing was off. Yeah, we'd take the boat out and anchor
and then just chill. Yeah,
and then take the dinghies in, take the tents in.
So it's protected enough water where you're not gonna.
Yeah. If the wind was gonna blow, you would have to go around to the right side of the island.
Yeah,
you have to go to the leeward side. But that was really not that big of a deal. And it was so shallow there. I mean, it was tough getting close enough to the islands.
Right, trying to worm your way in there.
So yeah, the whole area was 12 to 18 feet. So it wasn't like, the seas weren't going to get really that big.
Well, and they don't have the tides like we do up here.
No, not at all.
Wow.
So yeah, and then it was night and day between spearfishing around Sombrero Reef, where everyone fishes and like all the tourists go.
Yeah.
Going to these islands
that nobody goes to.
Yeah, especially this little place called the Marquis Islands. Marquesas. Yeah, it was in between Key West and the Dry Tortugas. Like this little, it almost looked like a volcano. It was like a little circular pattern of islands, and on the south side you could get up in between these two like cut off like in between the ring of islands. So we'd go up into there, and you'd bump a little bit because the hunter drew like
Give her
5.5
some more
feet.
juice.
Yeah, so we'd bump around, and we'd get up into this right in between these two islands, and we anchored. And spearfishing there, it was crazy because we would go up to the mangroves, and there were hundreds of snapper.
Yeah.
So it went from trying to find a fish and diving down to get it
like which one
to picking one. Yeah,
Right.
picking the size you want. And you could dive down into the channels, and there were grouper and sheep's head in there. There were stone crabs everywhere. We the first time I went, there were 3 or 4 boats, and we all went down there. And we had these big steel bowls that were probably like 2 feet in diameter.
Yeah.
And we would fill those with fried fish, lobster tails, and stone crabs every night.
Yeah, what was sort of the cooking? What sort of kitchen would you set up on these little sandbar islands?
Just cooking on the boats.
Oh, just cooking on the boats,
Yeah, just using the boats. We had the little,
like a little grill,
the
gas
little
grill or
square
whatever.
grills. Yeah, a couple of people had those, so we would take those to the beach. But we usually cooked. Like the first time we went to the Marquesas, a big catamaran went. So every night, everyone would go to the catamaran to eat,
Right.
and that's where we had all the food. And but the stone crabs were the size of your hand, those claws.
Yeah,
And we had a bowl full of them. I mean, hundreds of dollars it would cost in Key West, like at a restaurant.
Yeah.
We had that every single night. We had 20, 30 lobster tails, and as many fish as we wanted to clean.
Yeah, that's where it comes into. Yeah, I mean, it's the sea can be very bountiful if you're in an area like that. I mean, obviously it's changing these days a bit, but I ran into tons of people in the islands in the Caribbean. That's how they ate.
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Oh, you don't eat red meat?" They're like, "No, I eat out of the sea. I eat fish, I eat whelks, I eat anything and everything, but it all comes out of the sea."
It was so random. We had steaks.
Why
bother with it? Why go buy those
exactly.
when you can have all this other stuff?
God, that sounds like amazing adventure times.
Oh, it was.
Jeez.
And I was I started when I was 28. So by the time I got to 131, I think I was in 33, 34.
Right.
And I ended up dating this little 21-year-old girl. So that was kind of my midlife crisis. Instead of my red sports car, I just dated this little 21-year-old. So she would always come with us, and it was perfect.
Nice, man.
It was a fun time, yeah. So
and you came out of it with your own business.
yeah. I ended up diving boat bottoms. Like I said, I started diving boat bottoms, and I didn't even have air. I would just free dive and clean the boats just to practice, because I wanted to practice holding my breath so I could keep up with these young guys that were diving 40, 50 feet and staying down there for 3 minutes, or, it wasn't 3 minutes, but
that's insane.
they would stay down there forever. I never did catch up with those guys, but yeah.
No, it's crazy. There's a few like sort of pro free divers down in the British Virgin Islands that I know, and 60, 80 feet down there for definitely over 3 minutes. It's like, wow.
I don't know how they do it. They would swim through like rock formations, almost like little caves, and with little gaps that you could see them swim through. So you see parts of their body swimming underneath all these rocks. And I was like, there's no way I would swim 40 feet and then go into that, and swim all through there and then come back up.
What
they
if
were
you
amazing.
like hiccup, or if you burp and all of a sudden you're
or
like,
get stuck. Get stuck in the rock, like have to start, and then have to start backing your way back. There's so many nightmare
are
scenarios.
Sweating already. Well, did you guys do any scuba when you're down there, or was it all just free diving?
It was all free diving. I mean, I had scuba. We did a lot of like the hookahs. We would have the compressors on the boat, and we would throw like a compressor, and we would attach 2 50-foot hoses on there.
Yeah.
And then we just throw the regulators out. And if you wanted to grab the hose while you were swimming or snorkeling or diving, you could grab this hose and put it in, and you could dive down 50 feet with the hose. So we had that always going.
Well, when you do that, do you have to still be sort of cautious about the nitrogen buildup in your body? In the bloodstream?
Don't think so. Because no one stayed down that long. You know, it was mostly going down there to try to get fish and coming back up.
Right. Oh,
At least
okay.
I hope not.
Yeah. Well,
I never had any problems
I
with
know
it.
when I learned how to do scuba, and I've barely done any, so I'm not an expert by any means. But yeah, it was when we would do dives where we would go down to like 80 feet for a half hour, 45 minutes. We definitely had to do like a slow resurface and maybe stop for a minute or so here. You know,
Yeah.
nothing extreme, but
No, we never. I mean, it was only a 50-foot hose, and it's not like you go straight down. You know, you're always away from the boats. The hose isn't going straight down; it's going in kind of.
yeah, yeah.
So we're in 18, or when you use the
oh
hose
yeah,
and you're
those
trying to
depths don't
get
matter.
water. Yeah, when we use the regulators and we go down and we try to like tickle the lobsters out of underneath the rocks or something like that,
Mhm.
or you want to go down there and sit and wait for a fish to come by. You can't go down that deep. You're always, you know, it's always on a reef. So, the deepest would probably be 20 feet, maybe
Right.
25 feet. But
Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's definitely not in any sort of danger zone. That's crazy though, man. And now, I mean, yeah, obviously you still got the setup here for doing boat bottoms and stuff. You ever thought about trying to do a little treasure hunting with that thing? Along, like, St.
I always dream
Augustine
about
and
it,
all that?
but that equipment is so expensive. Like buying those
The metal detectors
tow
and
behind
stuff?
sonar arrays to, because you have to really go out there and search distances. So they usually tow these really expensive, like metal detectors or
Yeah,
sonar. I mean, it's just crazy expensive. And I think if you do find a treasure, you're going to be fighting the government right off the bat.
Oh,
They're going to want to
instantly,
come
yeah,
and take
yeah.
it. So
No, it's,
I always dream about going and finding one and sneaking some gold coins away. But
yeah, right.
we went to a lot of wrecks, but most of the wrecks around the Keys are really just the stone ballast
Right,
piles.
right.
with maybe like an old rotting piece of wood. There really wasn't any.
Or
I
an
never-
anchor or cannon or something.
Yeah, I never found anything like that. It was just always the ballast rubbles on any of the dives.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like big gas cans, like just really 12 by 12 feet square metal boxes that we used to always find because there'd be holes rotted out in them, and there'd be lobsters down in there,
yeah,
or
yeah.
big fish. Like grouper would go down in there and hide. I remember one time, I think it was Boca Chica, on the way to the Marquesas. It wasn't an ancient shipwreck, but it was like some old freighter that had sunk. And we were swimming around there, and we found one of the big Goliath groupers. I mean, 900-pound Goliath
Bite your
groupers.
arm off.
Yeah, and it was just resting alongside of this bow. So we were swimming across, and I go to the front of the ship, and I turn around, and all I see are these giant lips, like these prehistoric fish lips that were wider than my whole head.
Yeah.
And I freaked out and swam back, and it was just this big, ugly-looking grouper.
Well, they look like a bass, like a largemouth bass.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Between that and a dinosaur.
Yeah.
This thing could swallow. There were three of us swimming around when we saw that, and I swear that thing could swallow all three of us whole if it wanted to. But it didn't do anything. It just sat on the bow like lazy, didn't
Right.
move. There was another little baby sort of grouper that was probably 200 pounds, another little Goliath grouper that was swimming around it. But that big, massive guy just sat like right up snug against the bow of that boat and was just chilling.
Well, and think about it, because you're sitting there, and it probably looked at you for a second and was like, nah, I'm not hungry.
Yeah.
That's how close you probably came to getting.
Especially in our
killed
black
by that thing.
wetsuits.
Yeah,
Probably looked
right.
like a tasty little seal to that thing. He was like, nah, I'm sleeping.
Well, there's in the BVI there's Anegada, which is this big, I think it's an atoll, but it has the horseshoe reef, which extends off it for miles and miles. It's huge, and tons of shipwrecks. There's like 300. They've only found maybe 100 of them or something, but there's one you come across, and I've been there twice, where it was an old ship, maybe 100 years old or something like that. So it was steam powered, it had the boilers and everything, but it was a cattle ship, and so you get over this thing, and the actual thing broke, but the rudder and the stern is still there, and the anchor's still there, and then the boilers are there, and then it's just bones. Jaw bones and just all these bones from
that
all
would
the
be
animals.
wild.
Yeah. And the thing I used to always think about, because when you go out there now, the only fish that's really around is just tons of barracuda. But in my head, 100 years ago on that reef, which would have been just the most plentiful, beautiful, pristine thing in the world, the amount of sharks that would have just enjoyed 200 head of cattle being dumped into the sea.
Oh, can you imagine?
What that would, oh my God, that would have
They'd
been
have been
insane.
feasting there for a couple of days.
Oh, dude, it would have, unbelievable. Because we had, the only thing close to that I've ever heard of, and I didn't get to witness it, but during one of, I don't know if it was one of the hurricanes or tropical storms, during the off season at the resort I was working at, the power got knocked out, and the guy who was supposed to be there wasn't there for the weekend. He was off, and long story short, all these freezers shut down. They were holding, all the frozen meat and all this sort of stuff. I mean, tons of it for this resort, and the resort was closed at the time. When they got back and found it, obviously all the meat's spoiled, and they had to take, I think it was like 10 or 15 huge garbage, 55-gallon drum size things filled with just meat. And they went out and they ended up dumping it up on the reef. And they said they didn't stay out there, which boggles my mind because it would have been just a feeding frenzy after like an hour. But can you imagine having that much to be able to just dump in the water and just sit back and be like, all right, crack a beer. Let's watch this show.
Oh, I bet the water was just boiling around there.
Oh.
Like those big schools of fish, when you see those guys come up and all the water just starts churning and boiling. But it was doing that for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Well,
That'd be
and then
crazy.
those sounds reverberate through the water, and then, everything hears that for probably 100 miles around, and it's all coming right for it. It's pretty crazy. We used to, at the end of the season, one of the things we used to always do, because there'd be 2 or 3 of us there waiting to fly back to the States, and whole resorts closed down, all that stuff. We'd always have a ham or a turkey, and like a frozen one, we'd drill a hole through it, put it on a string, and just hang it off the dock. And within usually about 2 hours, we usually would have like 5 to 7 foot lemon sharks coming up, just circling it, just taking bites. And that was always sort of the entertainment night, towards the end of the season. That was always really fun. I wish we had something like that here, but besides dolphins, I don't think there's any, I've never seen any sharks up here in the river.
Up here? No, I haven't. I've heard that there were some, but diving here, you can't see anything anyway. I've heard like big fish swim off. When the big powerful fish, you can hear that.
Yeah.
Chunk, and they take off. I've heard that a few times, but nothing like in the Keys. In the Keys, I saw a lot of sharks, but the bull sharks, you'd see those big 12, 15-foot bull sharks, but they never like bothered with me. When I was out on the reef, you could see them swim, but they never like paid attention. The manatees were the worst. Like I would be cleaning boats in Boot Key Harbor, and the manatees were curious. So they would come up, and it was the only time I ever like freaked out and swam and got out of the water, because this huge manatee comes up, and then it turned around and it flipped its tail up like it was going to piss on me or do something. It was just the weirdest thing. And I was like, I don't know what this thing's doing, but I'm getting out of here before I get sprayed with something. I don't know why they do that, but it happened 2 or 3 times. These big manatees would come and either just swim around, or they'd come up to you and with their tail and flip it up.
Hey, friend.
Yeah, it was.
What are you doing?
Strangest thing.
I mean, they're the most docile creatures,
Yeah.
It's the fact that they weigh, 1,000 pounds?
Yeah, they're enormous.
Like, whoa.
Have you ever like threw a garden hose when they come up to the docks?
I've seen videos of that, but no, I've never been able to do it.
People used to do that all the time. They'd throw these garden hoses out and turn them on, and those things would sit there with like chomping on the garden hose 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was like, how much water can these things drink? It was just amazing. They were there for the longest time, sucking on those garden hoses, getting all that fresh water.
Yeah, well, you got to kind of think. So these things are in, it's not completely salt water. It's more like a mix where they live, right?
Yeah, it was like brackish. Well, I mean,
Couple
it was
of
the
zoologists over here talking. Yeah, well, typically the manatee
was about 13%, I would say.
Manatee
Stick my finger in and
perceptus.
lick it, and I could tell you.
But yeah, I mean, how would they? Do they even need to get water?
Yeah, they
fresh,
have to
like
get fresh
pure,
water.
pure fresh water. Or can they somehow drink the brackish water? And
I don't know where they go to get. They must get fresh water from a runoff somewhere. They must know where to go to get fresh water.
I know plenty of people who don't drink fresh water. Humans, they drink Diet Coke.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, there's water in that.
Yeah.
All right, bud.
Or beer.
My head hurts all the time. Yeah, let's get some water down there.
Yeah. But yeah, that's why that was another thing that we probably shouldn't have done. No one wants you to throw your garden hoses in there because there's so many boats going in and out through there. They don't want the manatees getting hit by propellers.
Right,
So
right.
Don't feed them your garden hose water.
Well, and that's the sad thing. Whenever you see videos of manatees, even on nature shows and stuff, I don't think I've ever seen one that doesn't have the scars on its back.
Yeah, I've never seen one without
They've
the scars
all got
either.
that just crisscross. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, all of them. Even the babies, like a lot of the little baby ones, had little chunks taken out of their back or those little scars. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus, man,
They're too big to
Too
get
big
out of
and
the way
slow.
fast enough. But obviously they get out of there pretty quick because they got a propeller of a boat that's going pretty fast is only in the water about 1.5 feet.
I was hit by a dolphin one time. Like I pissed the dolphin off for some reason. I thought it was so cool because those are so fast. You only see little, even in Buki Harbor where the visibility was a lot better than here. You would just see them kind of dart by in the corner of your eye and look around.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this dolphin like starts slapping the top of the water with its tail. Like it's slapping. I'm like, what the hell is going
I've seen
on with
that
this thing?
go on down by the bridge.
Yeah, and I didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden, that thing hit me with its nose right in my leg, gave me the worst dead leg.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
Yeah, those things are so powerful. I mean, it was worse than a shark, I bet. It just came by and just went wham and then sped
Took off.
Yeah, my leg hurt for weeks. I mean, God, I couldn't finish the
Wow,
boat.
you
I was
got
thinking-
attacked by a dolphin. That's
yeah,
pretty
or
rare.
it just hit me by mistake. I don't know what it was doing, but I think it was
No,
pissed off
there's
because
no
when they
mistake.
slapped their tails like that, something was going on.
Yeah.
A lot of people say when they get like like the spare lures, they'll get them caught and then they get all pissed off when they get like old fishing line, old lures.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that pisses them off, but something made this thing mad and it just nailed me while I was cleaning this boat and took off.
There are
That was the
hazards to
worst.
be had. But I tell you, honestly, my least favorite thing about cleaning the bottom of my boat is getting all those little shrimp. Those little
Oh yeah.
krill size. I don't know what they are, but they look
Yeah, they're
like
little krill.
fleas. Oh man. And they're all over you if you've got chest hair like I do. I mean, they just get in there. They're in your ears.
Oh, yeah.
Luckily, they seem to come off, pretty easily when you have a hose or whatever. But
Yeah, you can spray them off. I get covered in those all the
and
time.
they start sort of, I don't know if they're biting or they're just sort of scratching, but after a while, it does.
Yeah,
You're like,
I think
"Ugh."
they're hooking into you with their tails or however they cling to something. They'll do that on your skin. They'll hook their little tails into you.
Well, because they must be, again, obviously we're experts, but I bet you they're eating some of the skin off of you, like the flakes. You know how, like, well, it seems like all tiny animals just want to eat the flaking skin that's coming off of our bodies.
Ugh.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's true, though. It's
But-
a delicious treat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I wear a wetsuit and the hood. I always wear the hood because when I do boats monthly, it doesn't get so bad. You'll get a couple of them on you. It's not really bad. But when I go and do boats that haven't been cleaned in 6 or 7 months, I mean, head from toe, you're just
Oh, yeah,
covered
that's
in the
bad.
krill. Fiddler crabs too. I mean, even the fiddler
Yep.
crabs are on you because I'm spraying all those off my wetsuit all the time.
A buddy
And
of
you
mine-
have to get used to it because they'll crawl around your goggles. I mean, I have that hood
know,
on,
it feels
but and
so
they'll get in
gruesome.
underneath your nose, like right between your
I'm
mask and the
starting
regulator.
to scratch right now. I do
You
those
just
things.
have to get used to it.
Well, when I cleaned mine last time, going around trying to find any spots I missed, I would feel the side of the boat, and I could just feel, instead of the moss that was there, it's just covered in those shrimp
Yeah,
already.
yeah, they stay. They
They're like,
they don't want to
"Yeah."
leave. Like once you clean the boat, a lot of times, especially those old boats that I've been cleaning a long time, I'll clean the boat and it'll still look dirty because all those krill just go back to that clean hull and they'll just stick and you can just wipe them off like dust.
And
Yeah.
they're just like, well, stick
They
on
love
you. Well, I'll tell you, man, it's been awesome to get to know you down here since last year, because last year was my first year here at Ladies Island, and then this is the second year. Are you thinking how you think you'll be here for a long time, or what are you thinking?
No, I think I came here because my mom, she lived in Denver, and when she retired, she told me, hey, I'll move to the East Coast. We didn't live in the same town for the last 20 years. So she's like, if I move to the East Coast somewhere, can we live in the same town? And I was like, yeah. And she had to pick Beaufort. So I came from the Keys.
It's a pretty place.
To Beaufort, yeah.
You can go sit on the Forrest Gump bench. You can go to the big chill house.
Yeah. Yeah, Beaufort's okay, I guess. I think I've been here too long. Especially, and that's another thing. When you start cruising, never go to a dock, because that boat had never been to a dock except to get fuel. It was always on a mooring ball or anchored out.
Yeah.
And I was excited to come here and get a dock for the first time, but that was 4 years ago, and it hasn't
The
left.
allure of amenities,
Yeah.
showers,
Air conditioning,
bathrooms, cooking facilities.
not having to row or at least get in a dinghy with a motor and go to a dock every time you leave the boat. You don't go to shore as often when you're anchored out or on a mooring
No,
boat.
not at all.
Not like
It's a different. I mean, I think there's definitely pros and cons. I did a ton of anchoring when I was in the Caribbean, and you're in some little cove. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can snorkel. You can do all this sort of stuff. If I was anchored down the river here, I'd probably be freaking going a little bit crazy at this point. And I know people who have, they're like, yeah, I'm going to anchor because it's free, and they're by themselves, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later they're pulling their teeth out. Hey, whoa, guy, you need a night on the town or something?
Yeah.
But no, I love being on the dock. Because I like the community. I mean, and I like the amenities and sort of stuff. But I just like being able to walk off of this thing and go stand on the earth.
Yeah. It's much nicer.
And pretty soon, as we're finally today, it must have hit almost 70 degrees today, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that we are in the beginning of spring?
Definitely here.
Yes.
For sure.
Okay.
I think maybe there'll be one more cold snap.
Adam said he said the last one was the last one.
He might be right.
I hope
it gets
so.
hot here quick.
It does, because last year I was stuck in Michigan because I was on the book tour, and then COVID and all that, and then I didn't come down here until they lifted the quarantine restrictions in May. And when I got down here, it was 89 degrees. What? I left and it was 35, and now it's 89. But I'm looking forward, dude. I'm looking forward to barbecuing and hanging out on the porch up there and complaining about the bugs instead of the cold. That's what I'm looking forward to.
They're coming. Don't worry. I think it's hotter here than in the Keys. I think here
sometimes,
in like Baltimore and the DC area, or maybe it's just being on the dock and not being in the constant breeze all the time. Like
that's
you are
a
down
huge factor, because the people used to come down to the islands, and they'd go from New York where it was 100 degrees, and they'd get down there and it'd be 82. And the wind is blowing, so people would be like, wow, how is it this temperature in August? I'm like, well, so it's trade winds. They keep it nice and cool. That was always sort of the secret of a lot of the Caribbean islands, because people just assume that after May it's going to be blistering heat down there because you're so close to the equator, but it's not. You have this wind that just constantly blows, and it cools everything off.
It makes a huge difference. I never thought about having an air conditioner while I was down here, down at the Keys or anywhere else, but here I couldn't imagine going through a summer without having an air conditioner.
Honestly, I thought about that too, but I'm not here obviously for the summer, but by the time May comes in, it's pretty hot. But I prefer just moving air. As long as I can get a fan ripping through this boat, then I'm cool with it. Like I can take the heat. But
like the world's largest box fan.
Yeah, well, my little fan fits perfectly in the forward hatch. So when I turn that on full and I blow it out, it just sucks air through this boat. And like if you stand right here in this little gap, it's like standing in a 20-knot breeze. That
would be nice. I need a bigger boat.
Yeah, right.
It's time to move up again.
Well, guess what? We're already getting to an hour, sir. You've done your penance. Chris, little inside thing. We moved a pop machine, which weighed about 800 pounds.
830 pounds dry.
Oh, my gosh. And I can only assume they do that so that they don't fall over on people. But we got her moved. We got her maneuvered. She's ready
Through
for
gravel,
sale.
over steps.
Yep.
We only took it, what? How many feet? 250 feet?
Easily 300 feet.
Oh, and it just wore us out.
Yeah, no, that was tough. But so Chris was good enough to oblige me and come on this podcast. But I do really appreciate it, man. You're one cool dude, and you got a heck of a lot of stories. I'm sure we'll probably get a request to do some more because I feel like we just scratched the surface of some of the insanity that is Chris. But
Yes, there are all kinds of stories.
yeah, right. Do you want to plug anything? I don't know. I keep it, I'm just going to use your first name if you don't want the past of 20 years ago to come haunt you.
Oh, no.
I
I don't really need to plug anything unless someone's coming through Beaufort and you need your bottom cleaned. I have no podcasts or not online anywhere, so I really have nothing to plug. I haven't written any books yet.
Hey, not yet. Sounds like you could, though.
But if you need your bottom cleaned or you need your boat moved, give me a call while you're in Beaufort.
What's the name of the bottom cleaning business?
Below the Waterline.
Below the Waterline.
Mm-hmm.
We do fine below the waterline. We can do a little, little chime about it. All right, brother. Well, I really appreciate it, and yeah, I guess other than that, thanks for listening.
No problem. I'll come back and do it when I need that pop machine moved again.
There we go. All right. Big thanks to Chris for coming in on the show today. And I also want to do a special shout out to my 2 patrons that are keeping this show moving. And hopefully there will be some more interviews coming very shortly. Thanks for listening.